Vikramaditya and the Hermit. Long ago, there lived a king named Vikramaditya who ruled over Ujjain. He was the most famous and fearless of all the rulers of his time. One day, he was presiding over his court as usual when a hermit came there. He offered a fruit to the king. The king was very judicious. He ordered his treasurer to keep the fruit safe and preserve it carefully. According to him, the fruit had been presented to him in the court, so it was his people's property. The treasurer, as per the king's orders, kept the fruit in the store. The next day, the hermit came again and gave another fruit to the king. The king in turn again gave it to his treasurer for storing it. These visits of the hermit to the king's court became a routine. Each time he gifted a fruit to the king. The gems in the fruit. One day the hermit came as usual to the court. He asked the king, "O king, where are the fruits I gave you? What did you do with them?" The king replied, "All the fruits have been kept safely in the royal treasury." The hermit said, "They must have got rotten by now." The king asked, "Why don't you find out yourself?" He sent for the treasurer and asked him to show the fruits. The treasurer led the king and the hermit to the place where he had kept the fruits. The king examined the fruits one by one and found that all of them were rotting. Then he cut one fruit. To his surprise, a gem fell out of it. Curious, he cut all the fruits and each had a gem. He asked the hermit, "How did this happen?" The hermit replied, "I have certain powers. The hermit's proposal. The hermit continued, "I can give you more of these. Your kingdom will prosper, and so will your people. But you will have to do something for me in return." The king thought for a while and asked, "What can I do for you?" The hermit replied, "In the forest of Tanakpur is a peepal tree, in which hangs a corpse upside down. You have to bring that corpse to me." The king was surprised to hear this. He asked, "Whose corpse is it?" The hermit replied, "A ghost named Betal lives in the corpse. Bring him to me. I want to enhance my spiritual powers. I will also help you." The king said, "I will get you the corpse in the interest of my people." The hermit said, "You can commence your mission on the next moonless night. I will wait for you in the crematory." King Vikramaditya finds Betal. So on the next moonless night, King Vikramaditya went to the forest. After looking for hours, King Vikramaditya found the peepal tree. He pulled the corpse down, placed it on his shoulder and started for his kingdom to give the corpse to the hermit. As King Vikramaditya travelled some distance, he heard a voice. It was the ghost in the corpse, which spoke to him. "Who are you? Why and where are you taking me?" The king replied, "I am Vikramaditya, the ruler of this kingdom. I have come to take you to my kingdom." The ghost asked, "Why and who told you about me?" The king replied, "A hermit told me about you. He needs you. But who are you?" The ghost replied, "My name is Betal. I am prepared to go with you. But there is a condition." "Tell me," ordered King Vikramaditya. Betal said, "During the journey, I will tell you a story to pass the time." Betal's condition. Betal continued, "But I have a condition. You will not utter a word till you have arrived at your destination. If you speak on the way, I will fly back to my peepal tree." King Vikramaditya agreed to the condition immediately. Betal continued, "During my travels, I recount to have heard that you are the most sensible king ruling your kingdom. Now listen carefully to the story I am going to tell you. You will have to answer my questions also regarding the story. If you deliberately evade answering my questions, I will break your head into pieces." The king replied, "Betal, as you know, truth always prevails. I promise not to let you down. I am prepared to hear your story." Betal responded, "I expect you to keep your word." Saying so, Betal began the story. The fair king. The city of Andak was ruled by a very righteous king. He personally looked into the affairs of his people. He listened to their complaints and redressed them as well. People were free to visit his court whenever they wished. They could express themselves freely. One day an old man came to the king's court. He was accompanied by his two blind sons. The king asked, "What brings you to the court?" The old man replied, "Your Highness, due to some unfortunate circumstances, I am leading a life of misery. But in a matter of time, I will regain my lost wealth. However, I would be highly obliged if you could lend me 1,000 gold coins. I will repay this loan as soon as I can." "And if you don't?" asked the king. The old man promptly replied, "I will leave my sons with you as guarantee." The old man continued, "Sir, my sons are blind, but they are gifted. They will serve you well." The king was surprised. He asked, "How can these blind sons of yours be of any service to me?" The old man replied, "Well, my elder son is an expert judge of horses, and my younger son can test any kind of jewel." The amazed king said, "But they are blind. How do they perform their tasks?" The old man replied, "They rely on their senses of smell and touch respectively to do their jobs. If you ever find any of them giving a wrong judgment, you may have them beheaded. You may also punish me after I have returned." The impressed king took the old man's word. He gave him the 1,000 gold coins he had asked for. He took the two blind sons into his service. The horse trader. Days went by. One day, a horse trader came to the court to sell a horse to the king. The trader stated that the horse was of a good Arabian breed. He boasted that it was very beautiful and a good runner. The king did not wish to buy the horse blindly, so he asked the blind son to check the horse. The blind son started examining the horse by touching and smelling it. This made the horse trader furious. He exclaimed, "What a strange way of checking a horse! And how can a blind man examine a horse? You had better stop this. It is nothing but a waste of my time as well as that of the king's." But the blind son calmly said to the king, "Your Majesty, please do not buy this horse. It might hurt you when you ride it." But the trader was angry at hearing this. The blind son's revelation. The king, on the other hand, thought about what the blind son said. Then he commanded, "Let a horse expert ride this horse." So an expert rider sat on the horse. But no sooner did he sit than the horse threw him off its back. The trader was stunned. He exclaimed, "The horse never behaves like that with me." The blind son replied, "What you say is true. But the fact is that this horse does not harm any milkman. Why did you give up your profession?" The horse trader gasped and asked, "How did you know that I was a milkman previously?" The blind son replied, "I found this out by smelling your horse. I could make out that it was born in your house. You fed it on a buffalo's milk. Its parents were also owned by you." The trader left the court along with his horse, amazed at the blind son's revelation. The jeweler. After a few days, a jeweler came to the king's court. He brought several precious stones and gems. The king liked a diamond. He gave it to the blind son and asked him to examine it. The blind son examined the diamond. He rubbed it between his palms several times. Then he said to the king, "Sir, the diamond is priceless, but it will be inauspicious for the one who wears it." The king asked, "Why do you say so?" The blind son replied, "Your Majesty, this diamond has taken the lives of at least 2 members of the jeweler's family." Hearing this, the jeweler felt ashamed of himself. He asked the king to forgive him. Then he left the court along with his gems and precious stones. A few days later, the old man came back. He repaid the coins he had borrowed. Then he asked the king for his sons. The king's justice. The blind sons came. And as the three were leaving, the king asked the old man, "I have seen your son's talents. What is yours?" The old man replied, "I can tell the reality of a man." The king asked, "Who am I?" "You are the son of a thief," replied the old man. The king was angry. He ordered the beheading of the old man and his two sons. As the story ended, Betal asked King Vikramaditya, "Was the king justified in ordering the execution? Speak up, or I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya replied, "No, the act was unjustifiable. The king really was the son of a thief, but the old man is to be blamed too. He should have realized what he was saying." Betal said, "Your judgment is praiseworthy, but because you have spoken, I am going." Saying so, Betal flew away. King Vikramaditya drew his sword and went after Betal to catch him again. Princess Chandralekha. King Vikramaditya cautiously approached the peepal tree. The corpse was hanging upside down as usual. He took the corpse down. Placing it on his shoulder, he marched towards his kingdom. On the way, Betal the ghost said to him, "I am going to tell you another story. Listen to it carefully and answer my question wisely. Otherwise, I will break your head into pieces." So Betal began telling the story. There was a beautiful princess named Chandralekha in the kingdom of Magda. Many princes from far and wide wished to marry her, but to their disappointment, Chandralekha did not find none of them suitable. Days went by. Chandralekha's mother became worried. She was surprised that Chandralekha did not like even one of the suitors. One day, she asked Chandralekha, "Why have you rejected all the marriage proposals? Did you not like any of them? What qualities are you looking for in your future husband?" The suitors. Princess Chandralekha thought for a moment and then replied, "My husband should be strong and talented. He should also be courageous." Her mother said, "If this is so, then look for these qualities yourself in the princes who propose to you for marriage." Chandralekha replied, "Yes, mother, I will." Some days later, a prince named Virendra came and proposed to Chandralekha. She did not beat about the bush and asked, "What is your expertise?" Virendra replied, "I tell the fortunes of people, and I have never been proven wrong." Chandralekha told him to be their guest till she made up her mind. The prince was taken to the guest chamber of the palace. The next day, another prince by the name of Udaivir arrived in the palace. He too proposed to Chandralekha. She said to him, "If you wish to marry me, I would like to know what your skills are." The princess is missing. Prince Udaivir replied that he possessed a chariot which could run on land and fly in the sky as well. He too was asked to stay as a guest by Chandralekha. Next day, a prince named Dhananjay proposed to Chandralekha. Princess Chandralekha put up the same question to him as she had put up to the other two princes. He replied, "I am an unparalleled warrior. No one can face me." He was also invited to stay as a guest. Everything seemed to be going well when something terrible happened. Chandralekha was found missing from the palace. She could be found nowhere. A detailed search was made, but there was no trace of her. The worried queen sent for Prince Virendra. She said to him, "You must know by now that the princess is missing. You are a fortune teller. Please find out where she is." The prince went into a trance. The princess is rescued. Then he made some calculations on a piece of paper and said, "A giant, in the hope of marrying the princess, has kidnapped her." The panicked queen went to her room. She summoned all the three princes in her room. Then she made a request to them, saying, "Please save my daughter Chandralekha." The three princes got down to work immediately. Prince Virendra drew a map to reach the giant's palace. Prince Udaivir offered to take the two princes in his magical chariot. Prince Dhananjay drew his sword and they all flew in the chariot towards the palace of the giant. The giant was furious to see the three princes in his palace. He rushed to fight against them. Dhananjay faced him. A fierce fight took place between him and the giant. Finally, Dhananjay cut off the giant's head with his sword. The giant lay dead. All three princes were very happy. The dilemma. Chandralekha and the three princes returned to the kingdom. The queen was very happy to see Chandralekha alive and well. She thanked all the three princes. Now all was well. Everybody was happy. But something new was happening. The three princes were arguing amongst themselves as to who should get the princess. Prince Virendra said, "If I had not told the whereabouts of the princess, you would not have found her. So it is me who should marry her." Prince Udayveer argued, "It was due to my chariot that we could reach the giant's palace." Prince Dhananjay stated, "Had I not fought the giant, everyone would have been dead, and the giant would have married Chandralekha." Finally, it was decided that Princess Chandralekha should herself choose her future husband. Betal said, "Vikram, answer me now. Whom did she marry? Who was the most deserving of the three?" Vikramaditya's answer. Betal continued, "Let me remind you that all the three princes made almost the same contribution towards the release of Chandralekha from the hands of the giant. And as always, if you do not answer my question correctly, I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya was silent for a few moments and then replied, "As the saying goes, might is right, so it would be Prince Dhananjay who was most suitable to marry Chandralekha. If he had not killed the giant, it would have been impossible to free the princess." Betal said, "Rightly judged, Vikram, but you have spoken in spite of my warnings. Now I have no choice but to leave you and return to my tree." Having said so, Betal left the shoulder of King Vikramaditya and flew away. A furious King Vikramaditya drew out his sword and ran after Betal to catch him once again. Brahmin Keshav. A furious King Vikramaditya followed Betal to the peepal tree. He pulled down the corpse from there. He lifted the corpse and put it on his shoulder. Then he started walking. On the way, Betal said to him, "Vikram, listen to the story I am going to tell you." Saying so, Betal began to tell the story. Once there was a town called Dharmasthala. It was situated on the banks of river Yamuna. In this town lived a Brahmin by the name of Keshav. He was very learned. He had read almost all the religious scriptures. Now he had a small family consisting of a wife, son and daughter, Madhumalti. Madhumalti was exceptionally beautiful. So beautiful was she that even the fairies envied her. But as she grew with each passing year, her parents became worried for her. They started looking for a suitable groom for her. Keshav and Madhu. One day, Keshav was invited to perform a religious ceremony in a client's house. While he was performing the ceremony, he came across a young Brahmin named Madhu. He was a student of the Vedas and the Shastras and had topped in the Gurukul. Keshav developed an instant liking for Madhu. He told Madhu about his daughter and expressed his desire to get Madhumalti married to him. He even paid a visit to Madhu's house and met his parents. Madhu's parents were very happy to get such a nice alliance. His father said, "It will be an honor to have Madhumalti as our daughter-in-law. In fact, we ourselves were looking for such an educated and respected family." A happy Keshav went home with a packet of sweets. He said to his wife, "Our worries are over. I have found a match for our daughter. His name is Madhu. He belongs to an educated and well-to-do family." The three alliances. Keshav's wife was very surprised. She said, "You should have talked to me before consenting for the alliance. As it is, I too have found a match for Madhumalti. The groom-to-be is a handsome young man named Vaman. His parents have also consented." Keshav could not say anything after hearing this, but there was more to come. As Keshav was digesting this fact, his son entered the house. He looked very excited. He said happily, "Father and mother, I have some good news for you. It will be a relief for you to hear that I have found a match for Madhumalti. The boy's name is Madhusudan. He is a highly accomplished man. The parents stared at each other in shock. They could not understand what was happening. Suddenly, there were three alliances for their daughter, Madhu, Vaman and Madhusudan. They told their son about the matches they had found for Madhumalti. Death of Madhumalti. All the three members of the family started thinking about the issue. They could not find a solution. Ultimately, they decided to leave the decision to Madhumalti. She would select her own husband from the three suitors. On the appointed day, all the three would-be grooms arrived at Keshav's house. It was a tough choice for Madhumalti to make, as all the three were good. In the midst of all this, unobserved by anyone, a black cobra crept into the room. It slowly crawled towards Madhumalti and bit her. None could save her. She died instantly. The three suitors mourned for their loss, as did everyone else. Later, Madhumalti's last rites were performed. Madhu gathered her charred bones in an earthen pot. He went to another town and started living there. Vaman gathered Madhumalti's ashes. He built a hut on that spot and started living there. Madhusudan and the Brahmin. Madhusudan became a devotee and wandered from one village to another in search of peace. One night, while roaming from one village to another, he came across a house. He asked the owner if he could stay there for a few days. The owner said yes immediately. Madhusudan was sleeping soundly when he was woken up by some noise. The owner and his wife were quarreling over some trifle, but the matter escalated. The owner, in a fit of rage, lifted his son and flung him into the fire. His son was burnt alive. Madhusudan was greatly distressed by witnessing all this. He was also very angry. He said to the owner, "You have done a very bad deed. You killed your child in anger. It was my mistake that I stayed with you. You will never be forgiven for your heinous crime." Madhumalti comes back to life. The owner felt guilty and regretted his act. He brought a book. He recited some mantras and sprinkled water on the ashes and bones of his son. Soon, his son was restored to life. Madhusudan could not believe his eyes. He thought, if I can obtain this book, I can restore Madhumalti's life. So one night, when everyone was asleep, he stole the book. He went to the cremation ground where Madhumalti's last rites had been performed. He found Madhu and Vaman there as well. He told them about the book. Both were very happy. He said to them, "Make a heap of her ashes and bones. Then I will restore her to life." They arranged the ashes and bones of Madhumalti. Then Madhusudan recited the mantras from the book. Soon Madhumalti was alive. All the three were overjoyed to see her. But again, each was blinded by his love for her. Each wanted to marry her. They started fighting amongst themselves for her. The wise decision. At this point, Betal asked the king, "Vikram, tell me whom Madhumalti should marry. If despite knowing you don't answer my question, I will smash your head into pieces." Vikramaditya gave a thought over Betal's question and replied, "Madhumalti married Vaman." Betal asked why. Vikram explained, "Each relationship holds a meaning. Madhusudan gave a new life to Madhumalti, so he was like her father. Madhu kept her charred bones, so he was like a son to her. It was Vaman who had built a hut and preserved her ashes, so he was fit to act as her husband. Thus, Madhumalti had every right to marry Vaman." Betal said, "You are really an evil king, but I had warned you not to open your mouth, which you did. So here I go back to my abode in the peepal tree." King Vikramaditya ran after Betal, who had already flown away. Birbal the Brave. King Vikramaditya reached the peepal tree. He pulled down the corpse and put it on his shoulder. Then he started walking. On the way, Betal said to King Vikramaditya, "I really admire you. You have a lot of courage and perseverance. I will tell you a story. After listening to the story, answer my questions. If you do not, I will smash your head into pieces." Then Betal started telling the story. In a kingdom called Vardhaman, there ruled a king named Roop Sen. He had a very brave and loyal chief called Rajeshwar. One day, a man named Birbal approached him. He was seeking employment. He claimed that he had great mastery in the use of weapons. He showed his skills to Rajeshwar. In turn, Rajeshwar was very impressed by Birbal, so he took Birbal to the palace of King Roop Sen. Birbal's exorbitant demand. The king saw Rajeshwar accompanied by Birbal, who greeted the king. "Hail, your majesty, long live the king." King Roop Sen asked Rajeshwar, "Who is this man?" Rajeshwar told the king everything about Birbal. He then recommended that Birbal should be engaged without delay. The king, being a man of few words and many ideas, after hearing his chief, asked, "Birbal, what shall I give you for your daily expenditure?" Birbal replied, "I charge 100 gold coins per day." The king was shocked. He said, "It is too much. I cannot pay this much. Have you a big army with you for which you need so much? Go elsewhere for employment." The courtiers were also surprised to hear of such an irrational demand. Birbal replied, "I have no big army. I have a small family consisting of me, my wife, a son, and a daughter. I have no fifth relative." Birbal is employed. King Roop Sen gave a thought as to why Birbal was demanding so much money. He reflected that it must be for a reason, which would be revealed later if Birbal was asking for so much money. The king also felt that it would turn out to be in his own advantage if he gave Birbal so much money. So, with this idea in his mind, he agreed to employ Birbal. He called his treasurer and ordered, "Give Birbal 100 gold coins every day." Then he said to Birbal, "Join your duties from tomorrow. You will be my personal security guard. Collect your money at the end of the day, after you have finished your duty. But your end of the day would mean the break of dawn, as you will be on duty at night." Birbal agreed and left the court. The spies reveal Birbal's secret. Birbal came on duty the next day. He remained on guard all night. He kept a strict eye on the king at all times, whether he would be eating, sleeping, and so on. After finishing his duty, he would collect his money and leave. One day, the curious king ordered his spies to follow Birbal and find out what he did with the 100 gold coins every day. After a week, the spies came back to the king and reported, "Your Majesty, we followed Birbal and found some things which will shock you. He takes the 100 gold coins and out of them gives 25 gold coins to poor people. Another 25 coins he offers at the temple. Yet another 25 he gives in charity to the Brahmins. Now, out of the remaining 25 gold coins, he gives 10 to lepers and another 10 to orphans." The Wailing Woman. The spies continued. As for himself, Birbal keeps just 5 coins for the members of his family. The king was surprised at this revelation about Birbal, but he was very pleased with the information. One night, King Roop Sen heard a woman wailing in the neighboring cemetery. He ordered Birbal to find the reason. Birbal went to the cemetery to meet the woman. Unknown to him, the king followed him to observe his courage. Birbal saw the woman and asked her, "Who are you and why are you crying?" The woman replied, "I am Lady Luck. I have been displaced from my place by Saturn. Now Saturn is set to destroy King Roop Sen. This makes me much distressed and this is the reason why I am wailing and crying." Birbal was shocked to hear this. He asked Lady Luck, "Is there any way in which the king can be saved from this tragedy?" Birbal and Lady Luck. Lady Luck replied, "Yes, he can be saved if someone sacrifices his own son at the temple of Mahakali to pacify Saturn." Saying so, Lady Luck disappeared. Birbal was left gaping. He kept thinking and thinking. Then he rushed straight home. He was not aware that King Roop Sen had followed him and had listened to the entire conversation that had taken place between him and Lady Luck. He was still not aware that the king was following him now as well. Reaching home, Birbal told his wife everything. She in turn woke her children up and told them everything. The son readily agreed to be sacrificed at the altar of Mahakali. So Birbal, his wife, son and daughter went to the temple of Mahakali to make the sacrifice for the sake of their king's safety. Reaching the temple, Birbal joined his palms and prayed to the goddess for King Roop Sen's safety. The sacrifice. Then his son knelt before the goddess and Birbal beheaded him. But Birbal's daughter could not bear the loss of her brother and killed herself. Birbal's wife could not bear the loss of her children, so she also killed herself. Birbal was shattered. He thought, "What will I do living all alone?" So he also killed himself. King Roop Sen was horrified to see all this, and out of guilt he decided to kill himself. But as he was going to do this, Goddess Kali came and stopped him. She told him to seek a wish. The king asked for the restoration of the life of Birbal and his family. The goddess brought some water and sprinkled it on the dead family. Soon everyone was alive and well. The king was very happy. He and the Birbal's family walked back to the kingdom. King Roop Sen gave half of his kingdom to Birbal. The verdict. Betal finished his story and asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, whose sacrifice was the highest? If you knowingly avoid giving a correct answer to my question, I will smash your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya laughed and said, King Roop Sen's sacrifice was the highest, as it was selfless and there was no ulterior motive to it. On the other hand, Birbal and the members of his family sacrificed their lives for some purpose or out of love for one another. But King Roop Sen had no need to kill himself for his servant and his family. But still, he was ready to sacrifice himself. Betal said, "Well said, you really are a wise king. But as you have not maintained silence despite my earlier warnings, I am leaving you." Saying so, Betal flew away from the shoulder of King Vikramaditya. The king ran after him till he again reached the peepal tree. Princess Shashibala. King Vikramaditya reached the tree, pulled down the dead body and putting it on his shoulder proceeded towards his kingdom. Betal said to him, "I will tell you a story to pass the time. Take note and reply to my questions honestly." Then Betal told the story. In the kingdom of Avanti lived a beautiful princess named Shashibala. She was intelligent too. Many princes from different countries sent proposals to marry her. One day, when the king was sitting in the court, the prince of Chola kingdom came there. He told the king about his wish to marry Shashibala. The king was pleased to hear this, for the Chola kingdom was a very powerful kingdom. The king needed time to think. Meanwhile, he asked the prince, "What is your expertise?" The Chola prince replied, "Sir, I am a fine archer. I can shoot only by listening to the sound, and I never miss my target." The second proposal. The king replied, "That is exceptional. Please do stay as my guest till I make my decision. I will also have to talk to my daughter about this proposal." So the prince was taken to the guest house. The next day, the prince of Vaishali came to the king's court, asking for Shashibala's hand. The king again asked, "What is your special gift?" The prince replied, "I alone know how to make the best silk cloth. It fetches a lot of money. Some of it I keep for my personal expenses, while the rest I distribute among the poor." He showed a sample of his cloth. The king and everyone else appeared wonderstruck to see the quality and softness of the cloth. The king sent the cloth to the princess. He requested the second prince also to stay in the palace as a guest till a decision was made. The four grooms-to-be. Shortly afterwards, another prince came to the court of the king. He too asked for Shashibala's hand. He stated that he was a great scholar. He had mastery over the Vedas and the Upanishads. The king made him his guest as well. Next came the prince of Chedi kingdom. He too asked for the hand of Shashibala. He claimed that he could understand the language of animals and birds. The king requested him to stay in the palace guest house too. The king and the queen decided that they would leave the decision to Shashibala, as they themselves were not able to decide. The king went to the princess. He said, "There are 4 suitors for you. You yourself have to decide whom to choose. Put the garland around the neck of the prince you like." Then the king called all the 4 princes in the royal garden to settle the matter. A while later, Princess Shashibala came there. Betal questions Vikram. At this point, Betal asked King Vikramaditya, "Now tell me, Vikram, whom Princess Shashibala chose as her husband? Answer me, or I will break your head into pieces. Do not remain silent." King Vikramaditya was silent for some time. He held Betal tightly, but knew that he had to answer the question. So he spoke. "Listen, Betal, a man can be a Brahmin, Shudra, Vaishya or Kshatriya by virtue of his actions. A princess is expected to marry a person of a warrior castle. So Shashibala would have definitely married the Chola prince, as he was a Kshatriya or warrior." Betal replied happily. "Rightly answered. Only a Kshatriya can be the right choice for the princess. But you have again spoken in spite of my warnings, so I am going to leave you." Saying so, Betal flew away with King Vikramaditya following him. The strange sight. King Vikramaditya was carrying the corpse back when Betal spoke. He said to King Vikramaditya, "I will tell you a story again to pass the time." So Betal told a story. There was a kingdom called Punyapur, which was ruled by King Veerbhadra. He had a loyal minister whose name was Satyamani. One day, Satyamani came to the king and requested, "Sir, I want to go on a pilgrimage. I have come to ask for your consent and blessings." King Veerbhadra willingly gave permission to Satyamani to go on the journey. So a happy Satyamani went on the pilgrimage. He visited the temple of Lord Shiva, which was near the seashore. After coming out of the temple, Satyamani watched the sea and the tides rising from it. He enjoyed the view so much that he made up his mind to spend his night on the shore. During midnight, he saw an extraordinary spectacle. The strange tree. Satyamani saw a tree rising out of the sea. It was glowing. Its leaves were made of gold. The fruits and the flowers of the tree were made of diamonds, sapphires, and pearls. And a more strange sight was that a young lady was sitting on a branch of the tree and playing a lyre. After a while, the sparkling tree went under the water. The next day, at midnight, Satyamani again waited for the tree to rise up again. When the tree emerged, he swam up to it and asked the maiden sitting on it, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" But the maiden did not reply. Instead, she dived into the sea. An excited Satyamani cancelled his pilgrimage. He returned to the kingdom and rushed to the king's court to tell him about his unique experience. Satyamani narrated what he saw to the king. The king too became eager to have a look at the tree. The king and the demon. So leaving Satyamani to manage the affairs of the court, the king went to the seashore. As soon as he saw the tree surfacing from the water, he swam up to it. The maiden was sitting on the tree, as usual, and playing a lyre. She said to the king, "Why have you come here?" The king replied, "I am attracted by your beauty." Soon the king and the lady got married. Then she said, "O king, do not be near me on the moonless night." But on the moonless night, the king came there with his sword and watched her. Suddenly, a demon appeared near the jewel tree and embraced the maiden. But as he bent down to kiss her, the angry king challenged him. The demon saw the king. He became angry and attacked him. A fierce fighting ensued between the two, and the king finally slew the demon's head. The maiden's curse. The maiden was very happy and thanked the king. The king asked, "Why did the demon visit you on a moonless night?" The maiden replied, "Let me tell you my story. I am the daughter of Gandharva Vidyasagar. He ate food which was cooked and served by me only. Once, while playing, I forgot to serve him. He had to remain hungry. Angry at my folly, he cursed me that I would be visited by the demon on every moonless night. The demon harassed me and wanted to marry me. When my father cooled down a little, he offered me a boon, according to which a king would come here someday and rescue me from the demon and marry me. So here you are." A dejected Satyamani. A happy Veerbhadra arrived in his kingdom along with the maiden. When Satyamani heard that the king had married the maiden, he committed suicide. Betal ended his story and asked, "Tell me, Vikram, why Satyamani committed suicide? Answer in all fairness, or I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya replied, "Satyamani died due to his own fault. He fell in love with the maiden. But if he wished to marry the maiden, he should not have told the king about the tree. He ought to have known that the king was unattached and would surely fall in love with this stunning maiden." Betal exclaimed, "Absolutely right. But as you have spoken, I have no option but to leave you and return to my dwelling in the peepal tree." Saying this, Betal flew away, with King Vikramaditya chasing him once again. Guru Datta. King Vikramaditya took down the corpse and, hanging it on his shoulder, began walking. Betal, as usual, could not keep quiet. He said to Vikramaditya, "I know you want to deliver me to the hermit, but in the meantime, hear a story from me. Listen very carefully." So Betal started his story. There was a kingdom called Gandhar. Its king was a law-abiding man. He had made many laws. Most of the actions of his subjects were governed by laws. One of the laws was that it was illegal for a man to get involved with a married woman. Those who broke this law were punished harshly and sent to prison or put to death. A merchant named Brahmadatta lived in the kingdom. He had a handsome son by the name of Guru Datta. He was looking for a bride. One day he went to the temple. Chandrasena's letter. In the temple, he chanced to see a very beautiful lady. He fell in love with her there and then. Many days passed by, but still his love for the lady did not diminish. One day, he asked his servant to find out all he could about the lady. A few days later, the servant reported that the lady's name was Chandrasena. She belonged to a well-to-do family. Her father was a wealthy landlord. A happy and excited Guru Datta sent his marriage proposal to her parents. But her parents politely turned down the proposal. They told him that Chandrasena was already engaged to a man named Jaikaran. Guru Datta felt dejected after hearing this. He thought of renouncing the world. But one day he received a letter from Chandrasena. She wrote that she was very impressed to know of Guru Datta's love for her. She promised him that she would, under any circumstance, meet him after her wedding. The thief. Guru Datta was very happy after reading the letter. Shortly afterwards, Chandrasena got married to Jaikaran. On the wedding night, she told her husband about Guru Datta. She told him of her promise to him. Jaikaran felt happy that his wife had told him the truth. He gave her his permission to go and see Guru Datta. So Chandrasena went to see Guru Datta immediately. It was quite dark. As she made her way, a man stopped her. The man told her that he was a thief. He asked her to give him all her ornaments. Chandrasena got frightened for a moment, but then regained her courage. She requested the thief to let her go. She told him her story and promised that she would give him all her jewels after she had returned. The thief thought for a while and asked, "How do I believe that you will keep your promise?" The good thief. Chandrasena replied, "Please believe me, this is the word of a woman who comes from a respectable family." The thief took her word and said, "You can go, but keep your word. I will be waiting for you." A thankful Chandrasena rushed off to meet Guru Datta. When Guru Datta saw her, he could not believe his eyes. He asked, "Why have you come here at this time of the night?" Chandrasena replied, "Do you not remember that I had told you I would meet you?" Guru Datta asked, "Does your husband know?" Chandrasena nodded her head in the affirmative. Guru Datta said, "I will have nothing to do with another man's wife. As it is a crime in this kingdom to have anything to do with another man's wife." A disappointed Chandrasena turned and walked back towards her home. On the way, she met the thief who was waiting for her. Poor Chandrasena. The thief saw Chandrasena's sad face. He asked her, "What is the matter? Why are you so sad?" Chandrasena told him everything that had transpired between her and Guru Datta. The thief praised her for keeping her word of meeting him. He wished her luck and let her go without taking her jewels. When Chandrasena reached home, she told her husband everything. But her husband became angry. He did not show any affection for Chandrasena. He said, "Neither a king, nor a minister, nor a wife, nor a person's hair, nor his nails look well out of their places. A woman's beauty remains in being loyal to her husband." Betal ended his tale and asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, tell me who holds the highest merit of the three? If you do not answer my question correctly, I shall break your head into pieces." The thief's merit. Vikramaditya forgot all about not speaking and replied, "The thief's merit is the highest." Betal asked, "But why is that so?" Vikramaditya replied, "The husband stopped loving her as soon as she told him about the other man. Guru Datta let go of her due to fear of punishment from the king. But the thief had no such reason, still he let her go. The thief did not harm Chandrasena, nor did he rob her. He had no ulterior motive for what he did. He could have taken all of Chandrasena's jewels if he wished to, but he did not do so, so his merit was the greatest." Betal laughed and said, "Vikram, you are indeed a judicious king, but as usual you have spoken instead of keeping silent. Hence I am departing from you and flying to my peepal tree." Thus Betal flew away from Vikramaditya's shoulder with the king following him. Leelavati. King Vikramaditya pulled down the corpse, put it on his shoulder and set out for his kingdom. After some time, Betal, who as usual could not keep quiet, spoke to King Vikramaditya. "Remain quiet if you want to, but I will tell you a story to make the journey short and comfortable, and I expect that you will answer my questions even if you do not wish to. You will have to, because I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya did not utter a word. Nevertheless, Betal began telling the story. There was a Brahmin whose name was Haridatta. He lived in the city of Kashi. He had a beautiful daughter whose name was Leelavati. She was of a marriageable age, but Haridatta was not able to find a groom for her as he was poor. Once, when Leelavati was sleeping in her room, a young man crept into her room. Leelavati helps the thief. Leelavati woke up immediately. She saw the young man standing in a corner. He seemed to be nervous. Leelavati asked him, "Who are you? What are you doing in my room? Are you a thief?" The young man replied, "Yes, I am a thief." Leelavati asked, "What do you want from my house?" The thief replied, "I have not come here to steal anything. I have come here to hide myself from the king's soldiers. I tried to steal jewelry from a wealthy merchant's house, but the soldiers saw me. They have been chasing me since then. I assure you, I have no intentions of robbing you. Please help me." The thief looked out of the window and exclaimed, "The soldiers are coming here." Leelavati told the thief to hide behind an almirah. The soldiers came and asked Leelavati's father a few questions. Then they went away. Leelavati's marriage. Leelavati in the meanwhile fell in love with the thief. She confessed her love for him. Soon they got married. The thief gave Leelavati all that he had stolen. After some time, Leelavati became pregnant. The thief went to some other city to steal. Time passed by, but he did not return. When he did not return for quite a few months, Leelavati asked about him. She came to learn that he had been arrested by the soldiers while trying to commit theft in the palace. The king had ordered that he should be put to death. Leelavati was shocked to hear this. Life stopped for her. But a few weeks after, her father got her married to another man. Later, she gave birth to a male child. Now, nobody knew the real identity of the father. It was assumed that the baby belonged to the husband. The three hands. Days passed into years. The baby grew into a handsome boy. But one day, Leelavati passed away. At that time, the boy was only 8 years old. His father looked after him. The boy grew into a handsome youth. But his father also passed away. He was left all alone. He looked after his father's business and made it profitable. When the Shraddh days came, he decided to go to the banks of river Falgu to offer oblations to the departed souls of his father and mother. So he went to the river. While he was offering oblations, he saw three hands, two of men and one of women, emerging out of the water. The young man was puzzled to see the three hands. He first asked the lady's hand, "Whose hand is this?" "It is your mother's hand," replied the hand. The young man offered her the maternal oblations. The confusion. Then he questioned the second hand. "Who does this hand belong to?" "It is your father's hand," replied the hand. "Whose is the third hand?" the young man asked confusedly. "It is your father's hand," the third hand replied. Now the young man was more confused. He asked, bewildered, after hearing the two hands, each claiming to be his father, "How can I have two fathers?" Then the second hand, which belonged to the thief, told the young man about the past. The third hand said, "I brought you up for years, till you became a young man." The young man thought, "One father gave me birth and the other brought me up." He was confused. He did not know to which hand he should offer the paternal oblations. Betal ended his tale here and asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, you are a wise king. The real father." Betal continued, "Tell me which hand was entitled to receive the paternal oblations. If you do not answer my question knowingly, I will split your head into pieces." Vikramaditya replied, "The one who brings up a child has the right to become a father. Nobody becomes a father by just giving birth to a child. As in this case, the thief was only accountable for the young man's birth, whereas the husband was his real father as he had actually brought up the boy. He had taken care of the boy. Therefore, it was the third hand which was actually entitled to receive paternal oblations." Betal exclaimed, "Vikram, you have once again proved your merit, but you have not kept quiet, so I am flying away to my tree." Thus Betal flew off with King Vikramaditya following in hot pursuit. King Shursen. As King Vikramaditya was walking towards his kingdom with the corpse, Betal asked Vikramaditya, "What is it in a man that makes him higher than the others?" King Vikramaditya did not reply. Betal spoke again, "Listen to my story related to this and answer my question. If you do not, I will break your head into pieces." Saying so, Betal began to tell the story. Once upon a time, there lived a king named Shursen. He was the ruler of Magda. He was known all over the world as a very good king. Many people came to see him. One day, he went hunting in the forest. He started chasing a deer. He was so involved in chasing the deer that he went deep inside the forest. The deer got away. As the king turned to go back, he lost his way. The king tried to find his way out of the forest, but could not. The king gets lost. It started to get dark. The king also became tired. He was hungry as well as thirsty, but there was nothing to eat. Finally, he gave up hope of finding a way out of the forest. So he decided to spend the night by resting on the ground. Though there were wild animals on the prowl, yet King Shursen did not get scared. He made his bed under a tree and began to take rest. He kept his sword near him. A little distance away from him, he had tied his horse to a tree. As King Shursen was waiting for sunrise, he heard a voice. "Who are you?" the voice asked. King Shursen was happy to hear a man's voice and asked, "First tell me, who are you?" The man replied, "I am a traveler, but I think you belong to a royal family. How did you end up here?" Gunadheep, the surprised king, asked, "How did you know that I belong to a royal family?" The man replied, "Your dress and your bejeweled sword are clear indications of that." The king replied, "You guessed right. I am King Shursen of Magdha kingdom. I lost my way while hunting a deer. What is your name? What do you do?" The man replied, "I am Gunadheep. I am an orphan. I am looking for a job. I saw you entering the forest. It was a perfect opportunity for me to meet you and to ask you for some work. So I started following you. This forest is known to me. I will take you out of the forest easily. For now, you can relax. Have some food that I have with me." The hungry king enjoyed the simple food. Gunadheep said to the king, "Now you take rest while I stand on guard." Gunadheep is mesmerized. The king slept comfortably. In the morning, King Shursen fetched his horse. Gunadheep sat behind the king. The king asked him to show the way out of the forest to his kingdom. It was around midday when they reached the kingdom. The people were very happy to see the king. Everyone rejoiced at the safe return of King Shursen. The palace officials were greatly relieved. The next day, King Shursen made Gunadheep his minister. He gave him a palace to live in, many maids and royal servants. Gunadheep was given many other facilities that came with the royal position. Gunadheep thanked the king for his kindness. One day, Gunadheep went for a round. He reached a lake on the outskirts of the city. There, he was mesmerized by someone. He saw a lovely girl filling water in her pitcher. The girl's shocking words. Gunadheep fell in love with her immediately. The girl also liked him. She asked him, "Do you like me?" "Yes," replied Gunadheep. She replied, "See me tomorrow at this very place. I shall meet you here at this time only." Saying so, the girl went away. Gunadheep returned to the palace. He told the king everything. The king told Gunadheep that he would also accompany him the other day. Gunadheep agreed happily. He was so excited that he could not sleep the whole night. The next day, King Shursen and Gunadheep reached the lake. The girl was already there and waiting for him. The girl saw the king and asked Gunadheep, "Who is he?" Gunadheep replied, "He is our king, King Shursen of Magdha. Bow before him." The girl bowed before the king to pay her respects and then said something very shocking. "I would like to marry him." The girl agrees. Gunadheep could not digest what the girl said. However, a while later, he regained his composure. He said to the king, "Your Majesty, she wishes to marry you only. Please marry her." But the king said, "This girl will marry you only." But the girl refused to marry Gunadheep. The king turned to the girl and said to her, "Yesterday you agreed to marry Gunadheep, but today you wish to marry me. What made you change your decision?" The girl replied, "I've always dreamt of living in a palace. So seeing you, I felt my dream come true." The king replied, "Your dream will come true. Gunadheep is my minister. He lives in a big palace. There are hundreds of servants and maids in his palace. You will have a life of luxury." So the girl immediately agreed to marry Gunadheep. Betal ended his story here. The noble of the two. Betal asked King Vikramaditya, "After hearing the story, tell me who the nobler of the two was? Gunadheep, who was ready to give up his love, or King Shursen, who told the girl to marry Gunadheep? Speak up, or I will break your head into pieces. Don't be quiet." King Vikramaditya replied, "Betal, King Shursen was nobler than Gunadheep. He was a king. He was supposed to look after the welfare of his subjects. He discharged his duties judiciously. These things place him above the ordinary and also prove that he was nobler than Gunadheep. Betal said, "You are absolutely right. I must appreciate your sense of justice. But since you have broken your promise of keeping silent, I am flying off your shoulder." Saying so, he flew off Vikramaditya's shoulder and took refuge in the peepal tree. Vikramaditya ran after him with his sword. Brajmukut and Ratan Raj. Betal began to narrate another tale as Vikramaditya carried him. A powerful king named Pratap Mukut ruled over Banaras. He had a wife and a son. His son's name was Brajmukut, who had a friend named Ratan Raj, the son of the state prime minister. One day, both the friends went hunting. The prince saw a deer and started chasing it. The deer gave him a great chase and finally disappeared into the thick trees. The prince too became tired. He got off from his horse and decided to wait for his friend to find him. When he looked around, he found that he was sitting near a temple which was situated in the middle of a garden. Suddenly, the gardener came there and said to him, "Please move from here, as the princess and her staff will be coming here to visit the temple. If she finds you here, she will scold me." The princess. The prince replied, "Okay, I will leave this place." Satisfied to hear this, the gardener went away. As Brajmukut was leaving the garden, the princess, accompanied by her friends, came there. Brajmukut saw the princess. She was very beautiful. Brajmukut fell in love with the princess instantly. When the princess came out of the temple, she saw Brajmukut, who was adjusting his horse's saddle. She too fell in love with him. She removed the lotus flower from her braids and put it near her ear. Then she nibbled it a bit and threw it onto the ground and trampled it under her feet. She then again picked the flower up and placed it on her heart. Then she walked away with her friends. Brajmukut could not make out anything of what the princess had done. Sadly, he walked away and waited for his friend. He was not able to forget the princess. The language of signs. While Prince Brajmukut was waiting for his friend, Ratan Raj on his part was also looking for his missing friend. After searching for a long time, he found Brajmukut. Ratan Raj saw the prince's sad face and asked, "Why are you so sad? What happened?" The prince told him everything about the princess. Ratan Raj heard everything and laughingly asked, "What do you wish to do now?" Brajmukut replied, "I think I have fallen in love with the princess. I wish to marry her, but I do not know whether she likes me or not." Ratan Raj again laughed and said, "She loves you, Brajmukut. How do you know?" Ratan Raj replied, "She has told you everything about herself through different signs. When she put the lotus near her ear, it meant she belonged to Karnataka. When she trampled the lotus under her feet, it meant that her name is Padmavati." Deciphering the language, Ratan Raj continued, "When she nibbled the flower, it means she is the daughter of King Dansen. She placed the lotus upon her heart to show how intensely she loves you." Brajmukut was happy to hear this. He said, "Let us go to her." Ratan Raj replied, "Yes, we will go to Karnataka." So both the friends went to Karnataka. Ratan Raj wanted to find someone who was a regular visitor to the palace. He found out about an old woman who was once the governess of Princess Padmavati. She could go and come to the palace as she pleased. Ratan Raj met her and said to her, "Would you please convey our message to Princess Padmavati?" The woman replied, "What if she becomes angry?" Ratan Raj said, "Nothing like that will ever happen." After much persuasion, the old woman agreed to convey the message to the princess. The old woman. Ratan Raj told the old woman, "Tell the princess that whoever she saw in the temple garden is here." The next day, the old woman conveyed the message to Padmavati. The princess heard everything. Then she smeared her hands with sandalwood paste and slapped the old woman on both her cheeks. Stunned, the old woman came back weeping. She told the two friends everything that had taken place. She said, "The princess is angry with me. Now the king will punish me." Brajmukut became very nervous to hear this, but Ratan Raj laughed and said, "Nothing will happen. What all this means is that the princess has invited you to meet her on the 10th night of the increasing moon." Prince Brajmukut became very happy. The old woman was also relieved. Brajmukut went to meet Padmavati on the appointed time, but when he returned, he was very sad. The plan. Ratan Raj asked him the reason of his sadness. Brajmukut told him that the princess's father had fixed her marriage with someone else. The princess herself was sad, as she loved him. "I will find a way," said Ratan Raj. He thought for some time and said, "I have a plan." "What is that?" asked Brajmukut. Ratan Raj said, "Take a trident, Trishul, with you when you go to meet her. When you see Padmavati, scratch her body by striking her with this Trishul. Then take away all her jewelry and come back." At first, Brajmukut refused to do, but Ratan Raj coaxed him. "Do as I say, otherwise you will never get the princess." So Brajmukut gave in and agreed to act on the advice of his friend. When he met Padmavati, he took all her jewelry and bruised her with the trident. Ratan Raj told Brajmukut to sell the jewelry of the princess. The princess is banished, so Brajmukut went to sell the jewelry in the same shop where the king got his jewelry made. The jeweler recognized the jewelry. He immediately informed the king. The king had Brajmukut arrested. He was presented before the king. The king asked, "Who gave you this jewelry?" Brajmukut replied, "A friend gave it to me." The king summoned the friend to the court. It was Ratan Raj. The king asked Ratan Raj the same question. Ratan Raj said, "Your Majesty, a witch attacked me at night. I too attacked her with my trident and snatched all her jewelry. You can find the bruise marks when you see her." Somehow the king found out that Princess Padmavati had the bruise marks. He banished her from his kingdom. The sad princess left the kingdom and met Brajmukut. But when she came to know the truth from Brajmukut, she was very happy. The faulty king. Brajmukut married the princess and took her to his kingdom. Here Betal ended his story and asked King Vikramaditya, "Who is at fault in this story? Who was responsible for the miserable state of the princess? Answer me, or I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya had no option but to answer Betal's questions. He said, "The king himself was responsible for the sad plight of the princess. He should have given a benefit of doubt to the princess before giving his judgment. The others had just done their duties. Ratan Raj had proved to be a good friend. He did a lot for the prince. The soldiers had performed their duty." Betal said, "You are absolutely right, Vikram, but you have spoken again, so off I go back to my people tree." Saying so, Betal flew King Vikramaditya's shoulder and the king followed him. Manimala. Betal started telling King Vikramaditya another story as he walked towards his kingdom. Long ago, there was a city known as Malaya Desh. Its king was Samarjit. He was a learned man and a courageous warrior. In his kingdom lived a very wealthy merchant. His name was Chandramani. He had an extremely beautiful and intelligent daughter named Manimala. One day, a courtier sought permission to speak to the king. The king allowed him to speak. So he said to the king, "Sir, in our kingdom lives a very wealthy merchant called Chandramani. He has a daughter by the name of Manimala. She is beauty par excellence. No one can match her beauty in this kingdom. She is of a marriageable age. I think she will be an apt bride for you. You should marry her." The king said, "If she is as you describe, then I will truly marry her." Then the courtier went away. The false report. The king called his most trusted maids. He ordered them to find out if Manimala was suitable to be his bride. So the maids left for their mission. They went to the house of Chandramani. There they met Manimala. They were blown away by her beauty. They talked with her and were highly impressed by her intellect. But the maids felt that since Manimala was so beautiful, it would be hazardous for the kingdom. They felt that the king would be distracted by her beauty. He would not perform his state affairs properly. So out of duty for their state, they decided to give a false report to the king. They came back to the king and said, "Your Majesty, we went to Chandramani's house. We met Manimala. We spoke to her as well. But we did not find anything extraordinary about her. She is not in the least suitable to be the queen." The king sees Manimala. The king heard them and changed his mind about marrying Manimala. When Chandramani came to know about the king's interest in Manimala, he himself offered Manimala's hand to the king in marriage. But the king refused straight away. A disappointed Chandramani got Manimala married to Krishnanand, who was a courtier of the king. Now one day it so happened that King Samarjit was passing Krishnanand's house. He happened to see Manimala, who was standing on the roof of her house. King Samarjit was mesmerized by her beauty and asked who she was. His minister informed him, "Your Majesty, she is Manimala, wife of Krishnanand. They got married recently. She is the same woman about whom you had made enquiries in the past through your maids." The king said, "But she is very beautiful, whereas the maids told me that she was not suitable to be my wife." Krishnanand's offer. King Samarjit called the maids who had visited Chandramani's house to meet Manimala. He said to the maids, "You had met Manimala and reported to me that she was not suitable for me. But I saw her today. She is very beautiful. Why did you lie to me?" The maids replied, "Your Majesty, it is true that Manimala is very beautiful, but we felt that her beauty could have become an obstacle. She could have dominated you and not let you run the affairs of the state smoothly. This is the reason we lied to you." At the moment, the king's courtier Krishnanand happened to come there. He paid respects to the king and said with both palms joined in reverence, "Your Majesty, as your loyal servant, I have a request to make. I heard what the maid said, but there is a way. I am ready to offer Manimala to you." The king's order. The king got angry on hearing this. He could not believe his ears. He said, "You are insulting me now. I never take another man's wife. It is also a sin to desire another man's wife." The furious king ordered death sentence for the maids. Betal finished his story and said, "Vikram, were the maids really at fault?" King Vikramaditya said, "The maids crossed their limits when they gave wrong information to the king. They were unfaithful to him, but they committed this crime at the cost of duty to the kingdom. The king in fact committed a more serious crime by punishing them." Betal was happy and said, "Well said, Vikram, but you have spoken again. I told you not to do so, so here I go." Saying so, Betal flew away from King Vikramaditya's shoulder. An angry King Vikramaditya followed him with his sword. King Jwala Sen. King Vikramaditya reached the peepal tree. He pulled the corpse down and putting it on his shoulder, walked as usual. Betal again started telling him a story. Once there was a king named Jwala Sen. He ruled the kingdom of Ujjain, but he was not a good king. The people did not like him. He was an addict and gambled the whole day. One day, King Jwala Sen was gambling as usual. In the process, he lost his kingdom to his opponent, who was the neighboring king. The neighboring king threw King Jwala Sen out of the kingdom. King Jwala Sen had nowhere to go, so he decided to take shelter in a friendly kingdom. Keeping this in mind, he started his journey. On the way, King Jwala Sen passed a crematory. He saw a hermit deep in meditation. The king was hungry, so he paid respects to the hermit and sat before him. The hermit. After a while, the hermit opened his eyes. He saw the king sitting before him and asked, "Who are you? why have you come here? King Jwala Sen told everything about himself to the hermit. Then he also mentioned that he was very hungry. The hermit replied, I am hermit, so I have only fruits and nuts to offer you. Would you like to eat those? The hungry king replied immediately, Yes, your holiness. So the hermit gave his skull bowl, which was filled with fruits and nuts, to the king. But the king did not wish to eat from the skull bowl. He said, I cannot eat from this skull bowl, as I am a king. The hermit just smiled. Then he chanted a mantra. Suddenly a beautiful woman appeared there. The hermit told the woman to take the king inside his hut and serve him delicious food in gold utensils. The king gets the mantra, so the woman took the king inside the hut, but the king was surprised to see a palace there. The woman served him delicious food in gold utensils. King Jwala Sen was attracted by the woman. He enjoyed the food as well as her company. After eating to his heart's content, he lay down to rest. Soon he was fast asleep. Several hours later, when the king got up, he was sad to see that there was no palace and no woman. Everything had disappeared. The king went to the hermit and asked, Where has everything disappeared, your holiness? The hermit replied, That was all illusion. I had created it. The king requested the hermit to teach him that mantra. The hermit said, It needs concentration and dedication. The king said he would do it. So the hermit gave a mantra to the king. The disappointed king. The king was ecstatic. The hermit said, Master the mantra by heart, then recite it for 30 days standing in cold water and then again for 30 days sitting in the fire. The king promised the hermit that he would follow his instructions. He learned the mantra by heart. Then he recited it for the first 30 days standing in cold water and then again for another 30 days sitting in the fire. But before showing his powers to the hermit, he decided to test the powers of the mantra by calling the same young girl whom the hermit had sent. So the king uttered the mantra. Sadly, the mantra did not create any woman. The king was very disappointed. Having ended the story here, Betal asked King Vikramaditya, Answer me as to why the mantra did not work. Was the hermit at fault? The king at fault. Betal continued, If you knowingly do not answer my question correctly, I shall break your head into pieces. King Vikramaditya replied, No, the hermit cannot be blamed. It was the fault of the king. It is not possible to master a mantra by just reciting it without concentration. Though the king did all that the hermit had told him to, yet he lacked concentration. He was constantly thinking of the girl, of spending time with her, or the luxuries of life which he always desired to have. One needs to have concentration to succeed. This is the reason he failed. Betal said, You are absolutely right as usual, Vikram, but you have spoken. I cannot stay with you now, so I will go. Vikramaditya tried to hold Betal tightly, but could not stop him. Betal flew off King Vikramaditya's shoulder. He headed for his abode in the peepal tree. King Vikramaditya was furious. He followed him as usual once again. The two brothers. Betal began telling another story to King Vikramaditya. A Brahmin lived in the city of Magda. He was a very religious person. He performed religious ceremonies for his clients. He had two sons. They were very talented. The first son could identify if there was wealth buried under the earth or whether there was water under it by simply touching the earth. Many people took his help and paid him in return. The second could make out the contents of an iron safe by simply smelling it from outside. He was also a proficient judge of women. By simply looking at a woman, he could tell about her qualities and nature. The king of Magda, Surya Narain, was told about this, so he called them to his court. He appointed both the Brahmin brothers as ministers in his royal court. One day, two men came to the king's court. The necklace. They were quarreling non-stop. They wanted to settle a dispute. They were fighting over a necklace. One said, "This necklace is mine." The other said, "Do not lie. This necklace is mine." They continued arguing. The king got angry over this and told them to be quiet. Both said they had proof that the necklace belonged to them. The king was confused, so he called the Brahmin brothers. He said to them, "Prove yourselves by identifying the real owner of the necklace." The first brother touched the hands of both the men and then the necklace. The second brother smelled the necklace and the hands of the men. The brother said, "This necklace belongs to that hefty-looking man." The hefty-looking man was very happy to listen to the judgment of the Brahmin brothers. He said, "Your Majesty, the necklace is really mine." The warning. The man continued, "But in reality, we had come here to test the skill of the Brahmin brothers, and we are happy to say that they have passed our test. Please forgive us." The king was very happy. He rewarded the Brahmin brothers with many precious gifts. Days passed by. One day, the king got a message. It was from the neighboring king. They were not on friendly terms, but the king had sent an offer of friendship. King Surya Narain was in a dilemma whether to accept the friendship or not. So he called the Brahmin brothers. He told them, "Go to the neighboring kingdom, find out the reason behind the king's offer of friendship." So the two Brahmin brothers went to see the neighboring king. They spent some time with him. Then they came back and reported to their king, "Your Majesty, though the king has offered his hand in friendship, yet please be careful." The chair. The brothers continued, "Do not rely on him blindly. This offer of friendship may turn out to be a passing phase." The king was disturbed to hear this, but kept quiet. The next day, the king received a gift from the enemy king. The gift was a beautiful throne-like cushioned chair with precious stones. The chair was accompanied by lots of sweets and fruits. The king was very impressed by the chair. He ordered it to be placed in his bedroom. He decided to sit on it to test how comfortable it was. As he was going to sit on it, the elder brother came there. He warned the king, "Your Majesty, please do not sit on this chair. I feel there is a hair in the cushioned seat of the chair." The king was shocked to hear this. The soldiers were called to find the hair. Inside the chair cushion, there indeed was a hair. It was very hard. The elder brother. The king got the hair examined by experts. They found that the hair had been smeared with deadly poison. Here Betal ended his story. He asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, tell me which of the two Brahmin brothers was the wiser? If you do not answer my question knowingly, I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya replied, "Betal, though both the brothers were highly gifted, yet the elder brother was wiser as he could detect the presence of the hair in the cushion." Betal said, "You are too good, but as you have spoken and broken the silence, I am going to depart from you." So Betal flew away from Vikramaditya's shoulder. Vikramaditya tried to stop him, but failed to do so. King Vikramaditya got exasperated at Betal's escape. He drew his sword and ran after him to teach him a lesson. The brothers and the maiden. King Vikramaditya, as usual, pulled the corpse down from the tree and put it on his shoulder. He started walking towards his kingdom. Betal could not keep silent and said to him, "While you are walking, let me tell you an interesting story." King Vikramaditya did not say anything. Betal smiled and started off with a story. In the city of Angaj lived two Brahmin brothers. The elder brother was called Sant, and the younger one was known as Basant. They loved each other a lot. Both were unmarried. One day they went to a garden. As they were taking a stroll in the garden, they happened to see a beautiful maiden. The maiden came near them and stood there. Sant immediately fell in love with her. Basant saw his brother and remarked, "You seem to have been blown away by her beauty." Sant smiled but did not reply. The old woman. In the meantime, the young maiden strolled around a bit, and then left the garden. The brother saw her going to a house close by. An old woman was sitting outside the house. Sant went to the old woman. He wanted to find out about the maiden. Sant said to the woman, "Mother, please tell me whose house is this?" The old woman smiled at first. She understood the purpose of why Sant was asking her this question. She replied, "I think both of you wish to meet her. But do not worry, you will find her again in the garden tomorrow. Come here at the same time." The next day, Sant got ready to go to the garden. Basant saw him getting ready and asked, "Where are you going?" Sant lied to Basant by saying, "Oh, I have some urgent work to do. I will be back soon." Basant and the maiden. The maiden replied, "No, here, take a look at me. Without my makeup, I am so ugly." Saying so, she removed the makeup from her face. But Basant was a grounded man. Looks did not matter much to him. So he replied, "I am not swayed by looks. Beauty is a temporary thing. But you are good-hearted, and that is what I like very much." The maiden was very happy to hear this. She said, "I shall give you all the happiness that a wife can give to her husband." Basant was ecstatic. He went home and told his brother that he was marrying the maiden. Sant was shocked to hear this. He told his brother, "The maiden is ugly. Why are you marrying her?" Sant tried to sway his brother's decision. Sant attacks Basant's wife. Therefore, one day, Basant married the maiden. To Basant's surprise, the maiden looked beautiful. So Basant asked her, "How do you look so beautiful?" The maiden laughed and said, "I'm actually beautiful. I wanted to test you. That is why I put on false makeup. I wanted to find out who loved me for my beauty and who for the sake of virtues." Basant was happy to know this. But when Sant came to know this truth, he was wild with rage. He went to Basant's house when he was not there. The maiden was surprised to see him there. Sant angrily attacked her. But Basant reached on time and fought against Sant. In the fighting that ensued, Sant was killed. The news of a brother killing a brother spread like wildfire in the city. There was shock and surprise on everyone's face. The judgment. Soon, Basant was arrested by the king's soldiers. He was taken to the king's court. Basant told the king everything. The king heard everything. Then he gave his judgment. At this point, Betal finished the story. He asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, tell me what judgment the king gave. If you fail to answer my question, I shall break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya thought for a moment and then said, "Betal, the king would have given no punishment to Basant. He must have released Basant with honor. The killing of Sant was altogether justified." A satisfied Betal said, "You are absolutely right. But again, you have broken your silence. So I am going to fly away to my abode. As usual, you will chase me. But I am helpless as I am guided by my own instincts." Saying so, Betal flew off with King Vikramaditya not far behind. The King's Parrot. Betal started telling King Vikramaditya another story as he carried him. King Gunwant of the Avanti kingdom was a very strong ruler. He had a parrot named Churaman. He was very wise and well versed in Sanskrit. The parrot had travelled to a number of kingdoms and was well informed about people and places. One day, the king asked the parrot, "Churaman, you are very knowledgeable. Please tell me where I can find a suitable match for myself." Churaman replied, "O king, in the kingdom you will find your mate. The king of Magad is Magdeshwar. He has a daughter named Chandravati. She is very learned and beautiful." The parrot described her so beautifully that the king was very impressed. He immediately sent a marriage proposal to King Magdeshwar. In the meanwhile, Chandravati also had a pet jay whose name was Madan Manjari. The marriage. She also liked the parrot because she spoke excellent Sanskrit. One day, the princess asked her, "Tell me, Madan Manjari, Whom should I marry? Who is suitable for me? Madan Manjari told her about King Gunwant. Chandravati, without even seeing Gunwant, fell in love with him. In fact, though neither had set eyes upon the other, both were mutually in love. In due course, the wedding ceremony took place with pomp and show, and soon Gunwant took leave of his in-laws and, taking Chandravati with him, left for his kingdom. Chandravati was sad to leave her mother. Therefore, she was allowed to carry her Jai along with her. She later told her husband the wonderful way in which she had first heard his name. He told her about his parrot and his advice. The king said, "Why should we keep them in separate cages? Let us keep them in one big cage and get them married." Mrignani. The newlywed Queen Chandravati liked the idea very much. So soon both the birds were put in a single cage. One day both the birds were talking to each other. Then, at the request of the Jai, the parrot began to tell a story. Once there was a wealthy man. His name was Dhanardhan. He lived in Churapur. He was a kind-hearted and religious man. But sadly, he had a wife who was of loose character. They had a daughter named Mrignani. But she too had loose moral like her mother. But she was more advanced than her mother. Dhanardhan was very ashamed of his daughter. So, at the first opportunity, he got her married. He thought maybe she would mend her ways after marriage. But he was wrong, for Mrignani could not mend her ways even after her marriage. Hardly after a few weeks of her marriage, one of her father's servants visited Mrignani. The murder charge. Now, this servant had been one of her former lovers, but seeing him, Mrignani got angry. She told him to get out of her house. But the servant did not listen to her. So Mrignani made a plan. She began to talk sweetly to him and offered him a drink. The servant drank the drink happily, but after a while he died. Mrignani had mixed poison in the drink. The servant never had a chance of survival. The husband came home in the evening. Mrignani greeted him very lovingly. She somehow managed to keep away her husband from the dead body of the servant. Night fell and everyone went off to sleep. Suddenly, Mrignani began to cry and wail. She shouted, "Help! My husband has killed my father's servant." Hearing the commotion, many people gathered there. The king's soldiers were informed about the murder by her neighbors. They came and arrested Mrignani's husband on the murder charge. The thief's testimony. The next day, the husband was brought before the king for a hearing. The king heard everything. He pronounced the husband guilty and the husband was given the death sentence by the king. But something very unexpected happened before Mrignani's husband could be hanged. A thief came to the court. He said to the king, "Your Majesty, the husband is not the murderer. It is the wife herself. I had gone to their house to commit theft. But before I could do anything, I witnessed the murder. I was petrified and ran away from the house. When I came to know that you had sentenced an innocent man to death, I felt it was my duty to come and tell you the truth." So the king immediately changed his judgment in the case. He set the husband free. Mrignani was sentenced to death. He also sent the thief behind bars. Father is the culprit. Betal ended his story here. He asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, you have heard the entire story. Now answer my question. Who was the real culprit in the story?" King Vikramaditya replied, "Betal, if the thief had not testified, Mrignani's husband would surely have been hanged to death. But the thief helped the husband, and he was cleared of all charges. On the whole, it is Mrignani's father who was to be blamed. He was the real culprit. He did not tell her husband to be about his daughter's character. He simply married her off. This fault proved devastating for the family." Betal said, "You are right, Vikram, but you have spoken again, so I must fly again and go back to my people tree." Thus Betal flew away, despite all the efforts of King Vikramaditya to stop him. A fuming Vikramaditya again followed Betal to catch him once again. The Brahmin is blessed. King Vikramaditya caught Betal before he could hang upside down on the peepal tree. Putting the dead body on his shoulder, he walked towards the crematory. On the way, Betal remarked, "Vikram, it is for the first time that you have caught me even before I could be in my abode. It seems that you will taste success soon. Now, as the road is too long, you had better listen to the story I tell you." So Betal began his story. There was a town named Baikuntpur. An old Brahmin named Nandhasan lived there. He was sad because he had no children. One day he felt very depressed. He said to himself, "I really do not know what sin I have committed, as God has not blessed me with a child." But it seemed that God had heard his prayers. Nandhasan was blessed with a son. He was thrilled and thanked God. The son dies. The Brahmin named the child Vishal Datta. With passing time, Vishal Datta grew up. The Brahmin brought him up in a traditional way. He received good education. By the age of 14 years, he had mastered the Vedas and the Upanishads. All was going well when something awful happened. Vishal Datta became seriously ill. None of the physicians could cure him, and finally he died. Nandhasan was totally shaken. He was so shocked that he was on the verge of getting mad. He threw himself on his son's bier and wept bitterly. He sat there for hours. Finally, it was time to take the body for cremation. So, a sad Nandhasan, along with other people, took the boy to the crematory. Near that place, under a tree, a very old sage was sitting in meditation. He got disturbed by the wailing of the people and looked in that direction. The sage saw the dead body of the boy. He went near it. The sage was tempted to enter the lifeless body of the boy. At this point, he at first wept bitterly and then laughed aloud. Then the sage discarded his old body and entered the dead body of the young boy. The boy was alive. The people were surprised as well as happy to see a dead Vishal Datta rising to life again. None knew that it was the sage. Here Betal ended his story and said, "Vikram, tell me why the sage wept at first and laughed later." King Vikramaditya replied, "The sage wept because he was leaving his old body. He laughed because he was thrilled to get a young body." Betal said, "You are right, Vikram, but I warned you not to speak which you forgot, so I will fly away." Saying so, Betal flew away, and Vikramaditya followed him in anger at having been duped again. The Princess and the Young Man. Betal started off with a new story as usual. In the kingdom of Kusumvati lived a princess named Prabhavati. Her father was King Sadachar. One day, as the princess was strolling in the palace garden, she saw a young man sleeping there. The princess got attracted to him. She woke him up and asked him why he was sleeping in the royal garden without permission. The young man replied, "I was very tired, so I decided to take rest here. I apologize for that, Your Highness." Even the young man was attracted to her. Then the young man went away from the garden. But as he walked in a hurry, he bumped his head into a tree. He fell unconscious on the ground. A while later, two Brahman Pandits, father and son, passed from there. Their names were Kranti Deva and Shanti Deva, respectively. They saw the young man lying on the ground. They immediately stopped and came to his help. The two Pandits. They sprinkled some water on the young man and chanted some mantras, and soon the young man regained his consciousness and sat upright. Then Kranti Deva asked him, "Who are you? What happened to you?" The young man replied, "I am Bhairav Datta. I hit my head against the tree and lost my consciousness." Kranti Deva then went away, but Shanti Deva stayed on. Bhairav told him about the princess. Shanti Deva offered to help Bhairav Datta attain his love. Bhairav Datta was very happy to hear this. Shanti Deva took out a pill from his bag. He gave it to Bhairav Datta and said, "When you put it in your mouth, you will transform into a girl. And when you take it out, you will be yourself. But do not swallow the pill or use it for wrong purposes." Bhairav Datta was very happy to get the pill. He asked, "How will I meet the princess?" Shanti Deva told him the plan. The plan. Shantideva disguised himself as an old man. Bhairadatta put the pill in the mouth and changed into a beautiful young girl. Then they proceeded towards the palace. Upon reaching the palace, they insisted on meeting the king. The king called them and asked, "What is the matter?" Shantideva introduced Bhairadatta as his would-be daughter-in-law and told the king that he was going for a pilgrimage. He wanted the king to allow his would-be daughter-in-law to stay in the palace till he returned, as it was unsafe to leave her alone. Her mother-in-law had passed away. The king agreed and said that she could stay with his daughter Prabhavati. Thus Bhairadatta started living with Prabhavati in her palace as her friend. One day, Bhairadatta revealed his truth to her. Prabhavati was very happy. This way, when no one used to be around, Bhairadatta used to transform himself into his original form. The minister's son. But when someone was around, Bhairadatta used to remain as a girl. Time passed by. Bhairadatta and Prabhavati performed Gandharva Vivah. One day, the minister's son saw Bhairadatta in the girl form. He found her very beautiful. He proposed to Bhairo to marry him. But Bhairo turned down his proposal. So he went and told his father everything. His father went to the king and told him about his son. The king heard everything. Then he told them to wait till the father-in-law of the young girl returned from his pilgrimage. The matter would be sorted then. Months passed by, but there was no news of the father-in-law or his son. So one day the king took a decision. He said to Bhairadatta, who was in the form of a girl, "Your father-in-law has not come back. I too am like your father. I also wish to see you get married. Will you marry my minister's son? He too is interested in marrying you." Bhairadatta's condition. As Bhairo started objecting, the king interrupted by saying, "I have made my decision. You will be married to him." Bhairadatta could not do anything, but he put a condition before the king. He said, "Since I am a Brahmin and he a Kshatriya, the law directs that before we can wed, he should perform a pilgrimage to all the holy places." The minister's son agreed immediately and left for the pilgrimage. In the meanwhile, one day, Bhairadatta came to his male form, so he had to run away from the palace. Since a long time had passed by, Shantideva was curious to know about Bhairo. He was in deep thoughts when Krantideva asked him what was bothering him. Shantideva told him everything. Krantideva became very angry and said, "Why did you give him the pill? He will misuse it." He told Shantideva to find out what was happening in the palace. Shantideva was shocked to hear that Bhairadatta was missing. He told everything to Krantideva. Whose wife? So they decided to visit King Sadachar. Krantideva became a young man and Shantideva his old self. Shantideva said to the king, "I have come to take back my daughter-in-law." But the king apologized and said that the daughter had mysteriously disappeared from the palace. Shantideva was very angry. The king felt very much embarrassed. He did not want to annoy the Brahmin, so he offered his own daughter Prabhavati instead in the marriage. Thus, the marriage between Prabhavati and Shantideva was solemnized. Bhairadatta came to know about the marriage. He claimed Princess Prabhavati as his own bride. Here Betal asked Vikramaditya, who was Prabhavati's husband? Was it Shantideva or was it Bhairadatta? King Vikramaditya replied, Bhairadatta had performed Gandharva Vivah while Shantideva wedded legally. So Shantideva shall remain her legally wedded husband. You are right, said Betal, but he flew off as the king had spoken. The four sons. King Vikramaditya reached the peepal tree. He put the corpse on his shoulder and, as usual, started for the crematory. Betal, who never kept silent, said, Vikram, this forest is very scary. I know you are brave, but still. King Vikramaditya replied, I consider fear to be a sin. Betal laughed at this and, as usual, started telling a story. Many years ago, an old Brahmin named Vasudhar lived in the city of Ujjaini. He had 4 sons, but all 4 of them were unlike their father. They all were fools. They passed their time playing with one another. They did not like to study. The poor Brahmin was very worried for them. One day he called them and said, "I am worried about you all. You do nothing all day. When I die, what will you do? There is no one to look after you as well." The magicians. The old Brahmin continued, "Listen, it is very important to gain knowledge at the right time, or you will repent later on. But by then it will be too late." All the four sons listened very keenly to what their father was saying. They were convinced of what the old man said, so they finally decided to go in pursuit of knowledge. The old Brahmin was very happy. He said to them, "I have a friend who teaches magic. Go to him and learn the art of magic." So the four sons left their home to learn magic. The old Brahmin gave him his blessings. For years they learnt magic and became experts. Then they decided to return home. On their way back home, the four brothers had to pass a forest. While passing the forest, they saw, lying under a tree, a heap of skin and bones. They belonged to a dead lion. The lion gets alive. The four brothers decided to put their learning to test. One of them arranged all the bones of the lion. Then the second produced flesh over the bones with the help of his magic. The third brother covered the flesh and bones with the lion's skin. The fourth brother finally chanted some mantras and put life into the dead lion. As soon as the lion got life, it pounced upon the four brothers and killed them one by one. Having finished the story, Betal said to King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, tell me, which of the four brothers was the biggest fool?" King Vikramaditya replied, "Betal, the one who put life into the dead lion was the biggest fool. Only a fool could perform such an act without realizing that a living lion could be very dangerous. You're right, Vikram, but you spoke, so here I go." Betal laughed and immediately flew off Vikramaditya's shoulder. The four princesses. King Vikramaditya walked with the dead body when Betal spoke. He said, "Vikram, you will never be able to stop me. Try as you wish. If I want, I myself will stop escaping." King Vikramaditya did not say anything. Betal, as usual, started telling him a story. The king of Swargadesh had four very beautiful daughters. Apart from being beautiful, they were known all over the world for their delicacy and softness. It was hard to describe how delicate they were. Words failed to describe them. The first princess was so delicate that when the moonlight fell on her skin got burnt and blisters used to form. The second princess was so delicate that even a rose petal falling on her bruised and injured her body. One day, the king gave her a flower, but the flower fell on her toe and injured it. The sensitive princess. The third princess was so delicate that she used to faint even at the faintest noise. Once, the sound of a wooden pestle from a house far away gave her a severe headache and she fainted. And finally, the fourth princess was so tender that mere touching of her body left dark spots on her skin for many days. Therefore, people were very cautious when they were near any of them. For example, they never spoke loudly in front of the princess who was sensitive to a loud noise. They whispered to one another. No one touched the princess who was sensitive to touch. Despite them being known for their tenderness, many princes wished to marry them. The king himself was very much worried about the future of his daughters. He was more worried about how they would live after their marriage. He was especially more concerned for his second and fourth daughters. The poor old man. The king had deployed several maidservants to look after the comforts of all the four princesses. Of these maids, one was a very kind maid. She used to help the needy and give alms to beggars. One day, one of the princesses gave the maid some jewelry as a token of appreciation. The maid was very happy. She went out of the palace for some work. Suddenly, a poor old man came near her and said, "Please help me. I am very poor. I have a daughter who is to be married, but I have no money to get her married." The maid felt very bad for the poor old man. So she took out all her jewelry and gave it to the old man. The old man was very happy and blessed her. Then he went away. Meanwhile, the maid returned to the palace. She went to the princess's chamber. The physician. The princess saw that the jewels which she had given to the maid were missing. So she asked the maid, "Where is the jewelry I gave you?" The maid told her everything. Instead of being appreciative, the princess got angry at the maid. She said, "How dare you insult me by bestowing my jewels on someone else? Get out of the palace." So the poor maid was thrown out of service. Meanwhile, the king wanted to get his daughters cured. One day, a famous physician from a neighboring country came to his court. The king told him about his 4 daughters and asked the physician if they could be cured. The physician began to laugh on hearing this. The king asked in surprise, "Why are you laughing? Can't you cure my daughters?" The physician laughed again and said, "No." Then he left the court. Betal stopped telling the story here. The delicate maid. He asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, which of the 4 princesses was the most fragile? And why did the physician decline to treat the king's daughters? If you try to shun from answering my questions, I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya replied, "Betal, you will be astonished, but none of the 4 princesses was delicate." Betal was really amazed to hear this. King Vikramaditya said, "It was the maid who was the most delicate of them all." "How?" asked Betal. King Vikramaditya replied, "Compassion and warmth hold more importance. Physical delicacy does not matter." The maid was very compassionate. Whenever she went out of the palace, she gave alms to the poor and the needy man. The physician refused to treat the princesses because no medicine in the world can change a person's nature. The first princess is married. Betal, as usual, tried to fly away because Vikramaditya had spoken. But as soon as he tried to fly away, King Vikramaditya held him tightly. Betal said, "Vikram, you are getting smarter. I will not go away, but you will have to listen to my remaining story and also answer my question." King Vikramaditya nodded his head. So Betal continued. After the physician's departure, the king married off his first daughter. Her husband always kept her in a shaded place. In time, she gave birth to a baby. The whole kingdom was lighted up with earthen lamps. Sadly, the princess was herself exposed to the lights of the earthen lamps. Her skin was burnt and blisters formed on her body. King Vikramaditya began to laugh. Betal was perplexed. King Vikramaditya replied, "The sensitivity of the skin has nothing to do with the nature of a person. It is a kind of ailment." Betal kept quiet and King Vikramaditya walked on. King Jimutvahan and his son. As King Vikramaditya was carrying Betal, he started telling another story. Many years ago in Himachal Pradesh ruled a king named Jimutvahan. He was a very good king and was famous all over. He was very proficient and had a religious bent of mind. The king loved his people and took great care of his subjects. They too in turn loved him. The king had a son named Agnivahan. He was unlike his father. He was of wicked nature. He had all kinds of vices. The people also did not like him. King Jimutvahan was often worried about him. One day, as the king was holding his court, Agnivahan came charging and disturbed the meeting. He said to his father, "I want to sit on the throne, so you had better step down from it." The king was absolutely shocked to hear this, and so were the others gathered in the court. The old woman. He also threatened his father. He said, "If you do not step down, you will face dire consequences." Now Jimutvahan was a peace-loving man. He also loved his son, so he quietly stepped down from the throne. After that, he renounced the world and went to the forest to meditate for the rest of his life. Agnivahan, on the other hand, started troubling his subjects as soon as he became the king. People became very unhappy. Meanwhile, as Jimutvahan was meditating in the forest, he heard an old woman crying. He got up and asked the woman why she was crying. The old woman replied, "I have only one son. A demon has threatened that he will eat my son tonight." The king felt bad about this. He thought for a while and then said to the old woman, "Do not cry, I shall sacrifice myself." The demon. The king continued, "Tonight I shall pretend to be your son and offer myself to the demon to satisfy his hunger." But the old woman was hesitant about this. But the king did not change his mind, so the woman had to agree finally. When the son of the old woman came to know of this plan, he did not like it. He told the king to change his mind, but the king was adamant. He refused to listen to him. Finally, the old woman told her son not to persuade the king as he had made his decision. So as per the plan, when the demon came to eat the son, the king offered himself. The demon ate the king right away. Thus, the old woman's son was saved. Here Betal asked King Vikramaditya, "What do you think of the king's sacrifice? What is the value of such a sacrifice?" The sacrifice. King Vikramaditya kept silent for a while and then said, "Betal, I find no sacrifice here." "Why do you say that?" asked Betal. King Vikramaditya replied, "His sacrifice was not selfless. King Jimutvahan's sacrifice was motivated by his wish to achieve moksha and on virtues. Instead of yielding himself to the will of his unworthy son, he should have ended his life. Giving the reign of his kingdom in the cruel hands of his son, he had thrown his innocent subjects to innumerable hardships and tyranny. Can Jimutvahan be forgiven for his thoughtless act?" Betal thought over his story for a while and then said, "I think you are right in your judgment. But since you have spoken again, I must fly off your shoulder." Saying so, Betal left the shoulder of King Vikramaditya and flew off straight to his peepal tree. King Vikramaditya drew his sword again in great anger and chased Betal to retrieve him. Dharamdatta. King Vikramaditya, as usual, reached the tree. He pulled down the corpse and put it on his shoulder. Then he walked towards the crematory. Betal could not keep quiet and said, "The crematory is very far. I will tell you a story to pass the time." So he started telling a story. In the Cheli Desh lived a Brahmin. His name was Dharamdatta. He was very ugly looking. Now he was past his marriageable age because no girl wished to marry him. So he was very frustrated. He kept trying to woo girls and did not pay attention to his work. Despite this, people came to him for performing religious ceremonies and marriage rituals. One day, Dharamdatta was invited to perform a marriage ceremony. Though he had performed many ceremonies, yet he was attracted to the bride-to-be. He kept looking at her. He wished to have her. The rogue Brahmin. So he thought of an evil plan to get her. After the marriage ceremony, he told the bride's parents that their daughter was under the influence of a curse. It had to be removed to save her marriage. He told them that she would have to stay with him for one night to perform puja and other rituals. The parents immediately agreed. They did not give a second thought to the suggestion. But the Brahmin, pretending that it was part of the ceremony, misbehaved with her. Thinking that it was a part of the ceremony, the girl did not say anything. The next day, the girl went to her in-laws' house. After a while, the girl gave birth to a baby. The baby looked like Dharamdatta, the Brahmin. He had the same ugly face and the same dark complexion. The poor girl. The girl's husband was very shocked to see this. Then his wife told him everything. Her husband could not withstand the truth and told her to leave his house. The girl went to the king's court to claim justice. Here Betal asked King Vikramaditya, what would have been the king's decision in this case? Why did the girl not raise her voice for help that night? Why did she reveal all only when her husband asked her? Whose fault was it? Brahmin Dharamdatta's or the girl's parents? Answer my questions, or else I will break your head into pieces. King Vikramaditya thought for a while, and then he said, well, the girl is not at fault at all. She must have been innocent and thought that whatever was being done was a part of the marriage ritual. Hence, she did not tell anyone. The guilty parents. Then who was guilty? Was it Dharamdatta? Asked Betal. King Vikramaditya replied, "No, the girl's parents were guilty. They handed her over to the Brahmin for the whole night without thinking of the consequences. They must be punished." Betal said, "You are right, Vikram." But the king punished the Brahmin and he was hanged. The girl was considered innocent. The king asked her husband to accept her, but he refused to accept her. So he employed her as his queen's maid. "But you have broken your promise of silence again, so I have to leave you again." Before King Vikramaditya could respond, Betal managed to escape out of his grip and flew away straight to his peepal tree. King Vikramaditya drew his sword and ran after Betal at a tremendous speed to catch him once again. Chudavat and Bhadravat. Betal started telling a story as Vikramaditya carried him. In a place called Churapur lived a Brahmin by the name of Chudavat. He was a learned man. He had a handsome son whose name was Bhadravat. He was as learned as his father and knew all the Vedas. When Bhadravat was of a marriageable age, his father started looking for a suitable bride for him. But destiny had something else planned for him. His father passed away before he could perform his marriage. After his father's death, Bhadravat took over the family responsibility. He worked very hard. One day he was invited to a wedding. At the wedding, he saw a beautiful girl. He fell in love with the girl. The girl also fell in love with him. Bhadravat asked her to marry him. She said she would marry him. The girl's name was Leelavati. Bhadravat gets married. So on the appointed day, Bhadravat married Leelavati. He took her home. Time passed away. They were totally enjoying the marital bliss. One day, they were enjoying the sea waves when Leelavati was taken away by the strong waves. None could find her. Bhadravat could not bear the shock of his wife's death. He kept sitting near the sea for a long time. He almost lost his mental balance. His condition was like that of a beggar. His clothes were torn and dirty. His hair grew long. He would call out his wife's name on the streets. He went running from one place to another. After a while, still wandering, he reached Kanchanpur. His father's friend Vasudev lived there. When Vasudev saw Bhadravat, he recognized him instantly, despite his ragged state. He took him home. Vasudev asked Bhadravat to stay with him, but he refused. Poisoned kheer. One day, Vasudev asked his wife to cook kheer, rice and milk preparation. When she had prepared the kheer, Vasudev asked her to give some to Bhadravat. So Vasudev's wife put some kheer in a bowl. She gave the bowl to Bhadravat. Now Bhadravat did not eat the kheer there and then. He went to the garden of the house and sat under a tree. He kept the bowl by his side. Then he again started weeping in the memory of Leelavati. After a while, he fell asleep. The kheer bowl was still there. Suddenly, a poisonous snake which lived in the tree hole came out of its hole. It saw the kheer bowl. It came near the kheer bowl and spat some of its venom in the bowl, then went back into its hole. After a while, Bhadravat woke up. He was feeling hungry, so he ate the poisoned kheer. The innocent wife. But a little while later, he began to perspire badly and his body started to stiffen. He immediately understood that he had consumed poison. He ran to Vasudev's house. But it was too late. He started shouting, "You have poisoned me! You have poisoned me!" Then he fell down dead right at the entrance of Vasudev's house. Vasudev was highly perplexed. He did not know what to do. He got angry at his wife, saying, "You have murdered a Brahmin. Why did you mix poison in the kheer?" But his wife was innocent. She felt deeply hurt at the false allegations. She got utterly frustrated and committed suicide by jumping into a well. Betal stopped here and asked King Vikramaditya, "Tell me, who is to be blamed for the death of Vasudev's wife? Was it Vasudev or was it Bhadravat? What is your opinion?" King Vikramaditya began to think. Then he said, "None of them is to be held guilty." Guilty Bhadravat. Betal asked, "Was the snake guilty then?" The king replied, "Snakes have a natural tendency of spitting venom here and there, so it is quite foolish to pass a judgment against these creatures. Betal asked, then ultimately who is to be held guilty? The king replied, Bhadravat is the one who is guilty, but he cannot be blamed fully, as he was not in his right state of mind. A mentally unsound person cannot distinguish between good and bad, so in this particular case, no one is to be held guilty. Betal laughed and said to Vikramaditya, You are right, but since you have broken your promise of keeping silent, I am going back to my abode in the people. Saying so, Betal slipped out of King Vikramaditya's firm grip and flew away. Poor King Vikramaditya again cursed himself for not remaining silent and ran after Betal. Gandharva Sen. King Vikramaditya reached the peepal tree where the corpse was hanging. He pulled the corpse down and putting it on his shoulder started for the crematory. While walking, King Vikramaditya said to Betal, Do not have any false notions. I am going to take you to the hermit, so there is no need to run away from me. Betal said cheekily, When have I ever refused to go with you? It is only when you break your promise of silence do I have to retrieve to my tree. King Vikramaditya tightened his grip on Betal lest Betal should try to run away with his sweet talk. But Betal said, Do not worry, Vikram. I am not going to ditch you, but you will have to hear another story from me. King Vikramaditya was silent, so Betal started telling another story to him. Once in the city of Ujjaini lived a merchant. He had only one son. His name was Gandharva Sen. The washerwoman. He was a very handsome young man. Though he was not a prince, yet he lived a princely life. He had a horse. Every day he used to mount the horse and take a round of the city. When he rode, many women of the city swooned after him. But Gandharva Sen did not pay attention to any of them. He had yet to find someone suitable for himself. One day, while Gandharva Sen was riding near the river bank, he came across a place where many washermen were washing clothes. As Gandharva Sen was watching the washermen doing their jobs, his gaze fell upon a girl. She too was washing clothes. She was very beautiful. Gandharva Sen could not move his eyes away from her. He was struck by her beauty. She looked like a princess despite being a washerwoman. Near the river was a temple. Gandharva Sen sat outside the temple and kept looking at the girl. Love-struck Gandharva Sen. Finally, all the washermen stopped work and left for home. Even the girl left for home along with the members of her family. Poor Gandharva Sen was so captivated by her beauty that he could not bear to see her go. He kept looking at her till she had completely disappeared from his sight. After that, Gandharva Sen got up with a heavy heart and went inside the temple. He stood before the idol of the goddess and took an oath. "Oh mother, if I am able to marry this girl within a month, I will sacrifice my head at your feet." Saying this, a sad Gandharva Sen left the temple, mounted his horse and returned home. Reaching home, Gandharva Sen fell upon his bed. He was in a very odd state. The girl's face kept appearing in front of him. He could not forget her. Devdatta. The next day, he locked himself in his room. He did not come out at all. He did not eat anything, nor did he drink anything. Gandharva Sen's health was affected. His poor parents could not understand what was happening, but he did not tell them anything. They called the doctor, but he too gave up as he was not able to identify his illness. Since he did not confide in them, they at last called Devadatta. He was a close friend of Gandharva Sen. Devadatta came there immediately. He was worried to see his friend's sad form. He convinced Gandharva Sen to tell him all. Gandharva Sen told Devadatta about his newfound love. Gandharva Sen told him that he wanted to marry her. Devadatta asked his friend to be patient. Then he went away. He visited the girl's house. He spoke to the parents of the girl. Gandharva Sen and Roopmati. The girl's name was Roopmati. he told them about the marriage proposal of Gandharva Sen. The parents were very happy to hear about the marriage proposal. All in all, their daughter would be married to a wealthy man. Roopmati was also happy to get the proposal of marriage from Gandharva Sen. In reality, she herself had loved him since long, but never expressed her thoughts, thinking that Gandharva Sen's position in the society was much higher than that of her own. A happy Devadatta went and told Gandharva Sen everything. Gandharva Sen was ecstatic. On an auspicious day, Roopmati was married to Gandharva Sen. He thought of himself to be the luckiest man on the earth. Time flew by. It was more than a month since they got married. Everything was going well when suddenly one day Gandharva Sen remembered the pledge he had made before the goddess of sacrificing his head in case he was married to Roopmati within a month. Gandharva Sen's sacrifice. Gandharva Sen decided that it was time to fulfill his promise, so he went to the temple. Roopmati and Devadatta also went with him, but Gandharva Sen did not tell them about his oath. Reaching the temple, Gandharva Sen asked Roopmati and Devadatta to wait outside, and he himself went inside the temple. Then in the temple, Gandharva Sen chanted his prayers before the goddess and then sacrificed himself by cutting off his head with his sword. After a lot of time had passed and Gandharva Sen did not come out of the temple, Roopmati and Devadatta got anxious. So a worried Devadatta went inside the temple to look for him. To his shock, he found his friend with his head cut off lying on the floor. He did not understand why Gandharva Sen had done this, but a terrible thought entered Devadatta's mind. Devadatta kills himself. He thought that people might think that he had killed his friend so that he might marry Roopmati. So, in order to be on the safe side, Devadatta also cut off his head with his sword. After some time, Roopmati herself went inside the temple to see what was wrong. She was shocked to see both her husband and Devadatta lying on the ground. She decided to take her own life and begged the goddess to give her the same husband in the next life. The goddess was pleased and stopped her from killing herself. She asked her to join their heads and bodies so that she might grant them life. Out of excitement, she attached her husband's head to Devadatta's body and Devadatta's head to her husband's body. When she realized her mistake, she looked at the goddess for help. But the goddess said that it was not possible to exchange the heads. Confusion for Roopmati. Here Betal stopped and asked, "Now tell me, Vikram, whom Roopmati should choose as her husband. Was it not a crime if she chose the wrong body and head? Tell me, speak, or I shall break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya replied, "Roopmati should accept the head of Gandharva Sen as her husband." But Betal said, "Do not forget that it had the body of Devadatta. That does not matter. The head is the most important part of the human body. The head is the ultimate identity of a person," said King Vikramaditya. Betal said, "You are absolutely right. Yet you have spoken again. You have broken the silence. So it is time for me to fly." And before King Vikramaditya could react, Betal flew off his shoulder, leaving him with no other choice but to chase him again with his sword. Haldhar. King Vikramaditya as usual walked with Betal on his shoulder when Betal started telling a story. Once upon a time, there lived a rich merchant named Hemdeva in the city of Suryanagar. He had a lovely daughter named Vidyavati. When she was of a marriageable age, Hemdeva began searching for a suitable groom for her. One day, a young man named Haldhar came to meet Hemdeva. He was Hemdeva's friend's son, who had passed away. Haldhar said that after his father's death, he had set out for an island with all the wealth for business, but in the middle of the sea, a cyclone came and his ship turned upside down. That was why he lost everything. Saying so, Haldhar began to cry bitterly. Hemdeva believed him and consoled him, but the reality was pole's part. Haldhar was a rogue and kept bad company. The reality. His parents has asked him many a time to mend his ways, but all their efforts failed. Later, they left for their heavenly abode. After that, he had full liberty to do as he pleased. He made his house a gambling place, and he was gambling all the time. He went on losing everything: his father's money, mother's jewelry, property, and the house too. He reached such a stage that due to gambling, he was thrown out of his own house. He was homeless and roamed about on the streets and kept thinking that he would gamble and get back his lost wealth and property if he would get some money. Suddenly he remembered that one of his father's friends named Hemdeva was very rich. This is how he came to meet him. Meanwhile, hearing Haldar's sad story, Hemdeva was stirred. He consoled Haldar, saying, "Do not be disheartened. You are like a son to me. It was all destined. Now it is time to start afresh." Lajwanti is married. Just then, Hemdeva's daughter Lajwanti came there. She was wearing lots of jewelry. Haldar kept staring at her jewelry. Hemdeva introduced her to Haldar. Hemdeva got his daughter married to him. After their marriage, when Haldar and Lajwanti left for their house, Haldar was worried since he didn't know where to take Lajwanti, as he did not have a house. Also, he did not want his wife, but only her jewelry. So he thought of a plan. While they were passing by the forest, he asked her to remove all her jewelry and give it to him, on the pretext of fear of the robbers. Lajwanti was a very innocent girl. She never doubted her husband's intentions. So removing all her ornaments, she handed them to her husband. Haldar said, "It seems like we have covered a lot of distance. Now let us rest a while before we continue with our journey, and I will get some water in the meantime." Haldar absconds. So Haldar went away. A lot of time passed, but he did not return. Lajwanti started getting worried. The sun was setting. It was dangerous for her to stay in the forest. So she went back to her father's house. Hemdeva was surprised to see his daughter standing all alone at his doorstep. He got worried and asked her, "Why are you all alone? Where is Haldar?" Lajwanti did not speak the truth. She said, "The robbers robbed us and forcibly took away Haldar with them." Hemdeva consoled his daughter. On the other hand, Haldar, with all the ornaments and money, went to a gambling house. There he lost all the money and ornaments. Now he had no money again. Haldar got frustrated and came back to his father-in-law's house, thinking of telling another false story. Lajwanti lies. But he was in for a surprise, as Hemdeva welcomed him with open arms. Hemdeva said, "Thank God, you have come back safe and sound. Now everything will be alright. I will give you more money." Haldar took two and two together and realized that Lajwanti had not spoken the truth to her father. He was very happy. This gave him another opportunity to play a trick upon his father-in-law. So one day Haldar said to Hemdeva, "Father, as I have nothing to do here, let me go to my parental home. I will start a new business there. Lajwanti will also accompany me. She will help me set up my business." Hemdeva was happy to hear this. He thought it was good of Haldar to stand on his feet. He gave a bag of gold coins to Haldar. He also gave a new jewelry set to his daughter. Haldar kills Lajwanti. Soon both set out for their journey. Haldar kept the bag of gold coins with him. But shockingly, when they reached the forest, Haldar killed Lajwanti. Then he took all the ornaments and ran away. He never looked back. Betal, having finished the story, asked King Vikramaditya, who was accountable for Lajwanti's murder, "If you do not answer me, I will split your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya replied, "Lajwanti herself was responsible for her death." "How?" asked Betal. King Vikramaditya replied, "Lajwanti hid the truth. If she had told her parents everything as to what had happened to her in the forest, they would have never let Haldar come into her life again. They would have never trusted him." Betal exclaimed, "You are right again. As I am pleased with you, I free you of all the conditions of keeping silent." King Vikramaditya did not say anything, and kept walking towards his capital where the hermit was waiting for him. Madan and Ratan. King Vikramaditya was happy when Betal promised not to fly away anymore. As he walked silently, Betal said to him, "Vikram, we are near the hermit's place, but there is still time for you to listen to my story. It may be the last one." King Vikramaditya said, "So this will be your 25th story." Betal replied, "True, these 25 stories will be called Betal Pachisi." So Betal started telling his story. Once there were two men, Madan and Ratan, who lived on the island of Bali. They were very good friends. Once they went on a business trip together and made a lot of profit. While they were returning, they entered a forest. They decided to take rest. After taking rest, they decided to count their earnings. So putting all their money before them, they began to count it. The widow. While they were busy counting their money, they were disturbed by the sudden wailing of a woman. She was crying for help. She came to them. They asked her, "What is the matter? Why are you weeping?" The woman replied, "I am very sad. A few days back, I and my husband were passing through this forest when we were stopped and looted by robbers. They also killed my husband. Now I have no one to live for. I have no one to go to. So I will kill myself." Madan and Ratan were moved by the sad plight of the woman. So they told her that they would take care of her. They would help her in every way they could. The woman stopped crying and felt comforted. Then they took her along and went to their house. But on the way, both thought as to what was to be done. Madan dies. Both decided that the only way to help her was to get her married. They told the widow about this. The widow gave her consent. But both Madan and Ratan were interested in marrying her. So Madan told Ratan to marry her, and Ratan told Madan to marry her. Finally, they decided to play a game of dice. The winner would marry the widow. So they played a game of dice. But the game was a draw. So they decided to write their names on 2 slips of paper, and after folding them, asked the woman to pick up one of the slips. The woman picked up one slip. It was the slip with Madan's name. So Madan married the woman. After a few years, Madan was blessed with a son. But sadly he died soon after the birth of his child. Ratan was very much grieved at his friend's death. Right to property. But Ratan's problem was not over. There was a big problem waiting for him. Madan's widow demanded half of Ratan's property. As Madan had no partnership with Ratan, he refused to give any part of it. So Madan's widow appealed in the king's court. The king heard the case and gave his judgment. Here Betal stopped telling his story. He did not reveal what judgment the king gave. He asked King Vikramaditya, was Madan's widow justified in asking for a share in Ratan's property? King Vikramaditya replied, yes, she was justified in her demand. Why? Betal asked. King Vikramaditya replied, it is a fact that she was married to Madan. But one thing is also that she was found by both of them when they were business partners. Therefore, she had the same claim on both of them. On this basis, she was right in her claim for a share in Ratan's property as well. Betal's warning. Betal was very happy and said, you are right, Vikram. The king also gave the same judgment. King Vikramaditya, knowing Betal's nature, held on to him tightly. But Betal laughed and said, do not be distressed, Vikram. I am not going to leave you now. As King Vikramaditya was about to reach the crematory where the hermit was meditating, Betal said to him, Vikram, I have already forewarned you that the hermit is an evil being. He wants to sacrifice you also in order to enhance his demoniac powers. He will ask you to bow before the sacrificial fire, and when you do so, he will cut off your head. But when he tells you to bow, you tell him to show you how to do it. Hearing this, King Vikramaditya was startled, but he kept quiet. Going to the hermit, he threw Betal before him. The hermit. The hermit, seeing Betal lying at his feet, became ecstatic. He said, King Vikramaditya, you have done a splendid work. I bless you with a long rule. Then the hermit chopped Betal's body into pieces. He threw the pieces into the sacrificial fire. After that, he turned to King Vikramaditya and said, Vikram, now you also bow before this sacrificial fire to please the gods, so that they may bless you with a boon to rule over the world. Vikram, hearing these words, recalled suddenly to mind all that Betal had told him. He replied with the greatest humility, O pious person, I am a king ignorant of the way to do such obeisance. You are a spiritual being. Please teach me and I will do as you wish. The hermit is slain. The hermit fell in his own trap. As he bent his head down, King Vikramaditya, drawing his sword, struck him upon the neck. His head rolled from his body and fell upon the ground. The hermit was dead. Suddenly, King Vikramaditya heard someone laughing. It was none other than Betal, who was standing at a distance. But he was different. He was a handsome young man now. King Vikramaditya could not believe his eyes and asked him, Are you really Betal? Betal laughed and said, Yes, the hermit is dead. You have done me a great favor. But how did you get the name Betal? Asked King Vikramaditya. Betal replied, The hermit was my elder brother. He turned me into a ghost by supernatural powers. You were his next target. He did all this to enhance his demoniac powers. King Vikramaditya said, Come with me to my kingdom. I will make you a minister. Betal agreed immediately and gladly followed him. All is well. Finally, after many difficulties, King Vikramaditya and Betal were happy. Betal was especially happy as his hermit brother had been killed. He was an evil person and had plans to sacrifice King Vikramaditya. He wanted to occupy his throne. With his death, all his evil plans were laid to rest. Now there was nothing to worry about. Betal knew that it was only due to King Vikramaditya's bravery, determination and cleverness that he was free from curse and in his original form. He said, Vikram, I have caused you a lot of trouble during these past 25 stories, but you have exercised complete control over your nerves and patience. You also answered my questions judiciously without ever losing your temper. You are an extraordinary king. I am extremely happy with you. I grant you a boon. You shall enjoy the sovereignty of the Vidyadharas. King Vikramaditya thanked Betal for his generosity. Betal speaks. Betal again spoke. Vikram, I apologize for putting you through so much. Had there been someone else in your place, he would have given up and gone home. But you never gave up. I hassled you with so many different and difficult questions, but you answered each of them. You also gave a justification for each of them. My brother, the hermit, used you for selfish means. He knew you would do anything for the welfare of your subjects. Vikram, do not ever think that my purpose was to torment you. In reality, I wanted to test your bravery also apart from your wisdom. And I am happy to say that you proved yourself by not succumbing to the circumstances. In your position, the bravest of the brave would have given in. In time to come, people will always try to take up these qualities of yours. Betal was so happy that he wished to grant Vikramaditya another boon. Betal's boon. Betal's overwhelming speech made King Vikramaditya very happy. He said to Betal, I have everything that a man could ask for by God's grace, but I will gladly accept a boon from you. Please grant me the wish that the 25 stories told by, with the queries raised and their answers given by me, become famous all over the world. A pleased Betal responded, The boon is granted. These 25 stories will be famous all over the world. These will bring peace and solace to those who would listen to or read these pious stories with devotion. King Vikramaditya was happy to hear this. Then Betal went away. But after Betal had gone away, King Vikramaditya felt there was some divine form around him, and within no time he was proved right as Lord Shiva stood before him. He praised King Vikramaditya for having slain the hermit. He was the vilest enemy of the people. Lord Shiva appears. Lord Shiva said, Vikram, you are part of me. I created you to destroy the enemy forces and to maintain peace on the earth. I am happy to say that you performed your duties successfully. But your job is not yet over. You still have many more battles to conquer. And for this, I am giving you a sword, which is indestructible. My blessings are with you. May you always win. I also give you the sovereignty over the Vidyadharas for as long as you wish to have it. Once you attain self-realization, you will discard worldly pleasures and be one with me once again. Lord Shiva went away. As King Vikramaditya had finished his job, he returned to his capital Pratisthana. There his subjects welcomed him and honored him. There was great rejoicing everywhere.
Thanks for watching. Do like, share, subscribe to Sahil Book House.